What's going on, everyone? Desktops Gaming here. Welcome back to the channel. Today I figured before we tear down the NovaMesh SC we did a video on last week, we would do just a quick thermal overview, do some kind of benchmarking, more so to check thermals. We'll do some stress testing. We'll see if we have time for some games, some 3D Mark, stuff like that, just to show off the thermal capacity of the NovaMesh SE at its stock configuration, which is 4 fans included, which we talked about in the last video, of pretty solid for a case at pretty much $70, coming with 4 fans and the controller. So if you guys want to see more on that, go back to the last video, check that one out. But today, like I said, we're going to go over the thermals. So let's dive into that. Okay, so we'll go and jump into some thermal testing real quick here. Like I said, we are running the 5600X, which is PBO on, and then our 3070 just has its boost locked. So in the X1 software, we just have the boost lock enabled, so it'll enable the highest boost clock here. So the GPU temp limit and power limit have been raised at all. Like I said, this is just for the card to make sure it reaches its maximum boost. So we'll leave that there. We'll go and open hardware info here. We'll open just the sensors for that. So with really nothing going on in the background, like I said, we did do some testing right before this, but we figured we'd go ahead and jump into testing now. I apologize if you do hear some background noise. They decided to pressure wash my building all day, so but we had work to do, so we just kept rolling with it. We're sitting at an average of around, let's see, 34 or so C. This is because we were doing some stuff earlier. It'll normally sit as low as 29 or so with the fan curves settled back to their stock setting. And if we scroll on down here, so we can look for the GPU, as the GPU sitting at an average of 55 or so here. That's because we were just doing something with it and it's still kind of cooling down, but we'll go and jump into some testing to see where the thermals peak. First, we can run some Cinebench. We're just going to pull that up for the CPU. We'll do some CPU testing real quick, and we'll just let this cycle for a little bit and seeing what we do after a couple of runs. It won't be a perfect test because we'll have our hardware info open, but we'll go and do an all-core. Like I said, reminder that the CPU is just with PBO turned on. We'll go ahead and we'll list the specs on screen here as well so you guys can see that, but we're mainly just paying attention to the die temp average here after a couple of runs, and we'll let it run through, see what kind of scores we get. All right, so we've gotten our first score there of 44 at 16. Like I said, mainly just looking at the die temperature here. Looks like we hit a maximum of around 76 C. This is with a 240 AO from Deepcool. Like I said, we have this fan curve set pretty low, so we could get a lot more aggressive with this and make it a lot louder to bring the temp down a little more. But I'd say, with the CPU sitting at, let's see, pretty much 4.4, 4.5 all core, that's not too bad. Like I said, we're sitting at about 1.31 volts. Like I said, this is just letting PBO do what it wants to do for the all core overclock. We could go in, like I said, and tune this a little more finely, bring the voltage down a bit, and then bring the fan curve up a little bit. But this, we wanted to just test kind of out of the box performance, not really touching anything. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good representation of, in this case, getting pretty good airflow just with the AO mounted up top, 3 fans intake, the exhausting through the AO, and an exhaust fan in the back as well. So like I said, it looks like after a couple of runs here, we're sitting at around 77 or so, and then it'll come down a little bit. You can see how the test stopped, and then we got another score. Like I said, and it came back down to around like 72, hikes back up to 78, and pretty much holds there. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of stress testing on the GPU real quick. We'll go ahead and close this out. And then for the GPU, let's see, we could do some, let's see, we'll do worst case scenario. We'll do some Furmark. Go and bring that up. I don't care. We'll do some, at 1440p, we'll do 8x MSAA. So go ahead and stress it a good bit, and we'll go and run the GPU stress test to see what the card will do. And we'll just look at the temperature here, starting at around 62, 63 C. So that's with the little bit of heat already in the case since we were heating up the CPU just a second ago. So this is a pretty stressful test. Like I said, typically, you don't run this kind of MSAA in games, but Looks like we're hitting a power limit already, because like I said, I didn't increase the power limit on the card, and that's typically what you're going to run into with these anyway, as a power limit more so than a temp, unless the temp just skyrockets like crazy. We'll go and let this run for a little bit and see what we stabilize at. It looks like a little over a minute now. We're climbed up about 67C. Like I said, I can kind of hear the fans on the card spinning up a little bit, but like I said, this XC3 Ultra is still pretty quiet in this case. Like I said, case fans aren't ramping up super heavily. So like I said, we could brute force this down a little bit, but wanted to maintain noise levels that not too crazily loud. So like I said, again, I'm pretty impressive that it's able to maintain this no problem. Started the test around 53C. Just because, like I said, there was some heat in the case already, but like I said, we're getting up to around 67 now, so we'll let this go for just a little bit longer, just to show, kind of worst case, what you'd be expecting. Typically, the game's not going to be hitting a 3070 like this with, with a 100% burn-in test like this, and this is at 2560 by 1440, 8 times MSAA. Looks like the card's managed to stabilize just fine around 67 to 68C. Like I said, that's with the fan spinning, audibly on the card, but nothing annoying. Like I said, there's not really a huge whine to these fans at all. So like I said, it's not really a bothersome noise at all. Like I said, I'm only sitting maybe, that would be maybe 2 feet away from the desktop itself, sitting on my desk. So like I said, definitely if you had headphones on at all, you wouldn't notice, and I can hardly notice it unless I'm sitting completely quiet and here anyway. So definitely if you were working, say rendering down something, like I said, I don't think that would be an issue as far as volume goes, because like I said, the card's holding 67 to 68C just fine. It's kind of bouncing back and forth between there. And this is at, pretty much uses it 99 to 100%. All right, so now we'll go and dive into a little time spy test here. This one will be a little more accurate of, what the CPU and GPU would be doing during more of a gaming run. Like I said, still not completely a game, it's still a synthetic, but this would be a little more realistic compared to us running Cinebench and Furmark. More so just forcing 100% on the CPU and doing a power virus test on the GPU. So let's go ahead and give this guy a run, and then we'll see what our temps look like at the end on average, and then see what our scores come out to. Like I said, this is the 5600X. We have 16 gigs of G.Skill Trident Z at 3600, and then our GeForce RTX EVGA XC3 Ultra 3070. So we'll see what kind of numbers we get with this guy. Right now we're getting our results. We'll take a look here real quick. So scored pretty good. Like I said, if we take a look at the average frequency, we stayed at around 4.6 there. Keeping around 1905 or so on the GPU. Like I said, and if we take a look at temperatures there, like I said, this would be a little more realistic. As we dive into it there, we see the CPU temp hovering around, let's say I'd call that around 58 or so C at its highest, and then the GPU stayed pretty much what we got out of Furmark there at around a constant 62 to the highest we saw, looks like was about 68 during its test. Like I said, that was with, at the point of it being pretty much loaded at 100%. So overall, pretty good numbers for the stock configuration of this case. Like I said, this would be a little closer to what you would see in the game compared to just what we were getting off of Furmark and Cinebench. So this would be a little more accurate representation of what you would see in game. All right, guys, so as you can see, pretty good thermals for the 5600X and 3070 that's in this guy, with just the 240 cooling the AO and the 3070 staying in a stock air configuration. This is at, like we mentioned in the benchmarks there, with just PBO on and the card at stock. Like I said, we did a couple different tests there. You guys, if you want to pause through those, you can see kind of how it performed. But overall, really impressed for what this case can pull off, straight out of the box. The only thing really different we changed was with the AO, added 2 fans. The 2 fans that it comes with, but that would be on anything you decide to add to it. So, like I said, honestly impressed with what it's managed to do for its stock configuration and what we managed to get with it today. All right, so like I said, on our last video, like I said, that's where you'll see the more overview and the breakdown of the case. If you guys want to check that out, like I said, this was just mainly concerned with thermals, a short one for you guys today. Coming up on our next videos, we actually have a few cool little things coming in. We just got in a cool microphone we're going to test out. Might do some A and B comparisons against the lab I normally wear compared to that, more of a boom mic. And then we have a really neat PC coming in from Forum, one of their really small form factor PCs, or mini desk I don't know what you'd call them, honestly. They're small enough to mount to the back of monitors, but these actually include Ryzen processors. So we're going to be taking a look at that, seeing if you can stream, game on it, see if it makes a nice gaming system, or more so, for a 4K streaming system, something like that. So like I said, you guys definitely stay tuned to check that out. I do appreciate you guys stopping by and checking this one out. Like I said, if you do want to see more in this case, go back to that last video. But I appreciate you guys stopping by. Take it easy.